It was 2:37 a.m. when the silence of the hospital felt heavier than usual. Sarah, a night nurse who had worked there for 6 years, had grown used to the strange echoes and flickering lights that came with an old building. But that night, something was different. The East Wing had been closed for renovation for nearly a month, no patients, no staff, no lights. Yet as she walked past the hallway that led to it, she noticed a faint glow leaking through the frosted glass door at the end. The fluorescent hum was unmistakable. She froze, staring. The lights in that section had been cut off completely. She remembered because she had been there when maintenance shut the power down. A chill crept up her spine as she slowly pushed the swinging door open. The lights buzzed faintly, and the air felt colder, thicker, as though she had stepped underwater. The smell of antiseptic and dust was stronger here. She walked carefully, her shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Then, she heard it. The sound of a heart monitor beeping. Steady. Slow. Coming from one of the rooms on her left. Sarah's throat tightened. There couldn't be a patient in there. The beds had been stripped, the machines unplugged. Against her better judgment, she peeked through the small glass window of room 209. For a moment, her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. A patient lay on the bed, motionless, hooked up to a monitor that pulsed rhythmically with light. The screen flickered, and that's when Sarah realized the monitor wasn't plugged into the wall. The power cord dangled loosely, swaying slightly as if something had brushed past it. Then, through the static glow of the screen, she saw her own reflection, but the reflection smiled before she did. Sarah stared at the monitor long after the words vanished. Her hand hovered over the power switch, but she couldn't bring herself to touch it. The glow of the screen painted her face in sickly blue light, and she realized her pulse had synced with the faint hum of the machines around her. She finally reached out and unplugged the feed. The image didn't disappear. The camera kept running, its static crawling like insects under glass. She felt her throat go dry. "Power off," she whispered to no one. The moment the words left her mouth, the static froze, and every fluorescent light in the hallway flickered in unison like the building itself had flinched. Then, complete darkness. The only sound was her heartbeat thudding against the emptiness. She fumbled for her phone flashlight, but the screen wouldn't turn on, just a dim gray glow before dying completely. Somewhere deep in the East Wing, she heard a soft dragging sound, slow, deliberate, like something being pulled across linoleum. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to leave, but her training kept her rooted. Maybe it was maintenance, she thought. Maybe someone forgot to log their shift. But as she stepped into the hallway, the air felt wrong, too still, too cold. Her breath came out in faint clouds. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the corridor in dull red. And then, from the far end of the hall, she saw the faint outline of a person standing halfway in the shadows, facing her. Their head tilted slightly, almost curious. "Hello?" Sarah called, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, one arm slightly raised, pointing directly at her. The red light flickered once more, and when it steadied again, the hallway was empty. Sarah's shoes squeaked faintly against the floor as she took a cautious step forward. Her breath echoed off the tiled walls, too loud in the emptiness. She kept telling herself there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe a reflection. Maybe her exhaustion playing tricks. Still, she couldn't shake the heavy sensation that something had changed in the air, as if the building was no longer a place of healing but something watching, breathing, waiting. She moved toward the East Wing door. The chain and lock that had sealed it hung loosely, undone. Her heart skipped. Someone had been in here. She shone her flashlight down the corridor beyond, walls half-painted, equipment draped under plastic sheets. The light caught a set of wet footprints leading away from the doorway, the pattern faint but unmistakable. Bare feet. Human. Each print glistened as though freshly made, disappearing around the corner ahead. She hesitated only a second before following. The sound of her own steps mixed with something else, soft, uneven, like someone walking just a few paces ahead. She turned the corner and saw the footprints lead straight into room 209, the same room that had been empty for weeks. Her stomach twisted. The door stood slightly open, the darkness beyond thicker than the rest of the hall. "Hello," she whispered again. Silence. Then, a faint beeping noise, that same rhythmic sound she'd heard earlier. Her flashlight trembled in her grip as she stepped inside. The room was cold, far colder than the rest of the hospital. The monitor by the bed blinked steadily, though the power cord still dangled loose. And on the bed, someone was lying there now, completely still under the sheets. She reached out to pull them back, but before her hand touched the fabric, a faint whisper brushed her ear from behind. "You're late." Sarah froze, her fingers still hovering above the sheet. The whisper had been close enough that she felt the faint warmth of breath on her neck, but when she turned, the room was empty. Only the hum of the machines filled the air. Her flashlight jittered across the walls, landing on the empty doorway. Nothing. No one. "Hello," she said again, voice cracking. "Who's there?" No answer. She forced herself to pull the sheet back, half expecting to find nothing but an empty bed. Instead, she found an indentation, as if someone had been lying there moments ago. The fabric was still warm. Her heart pounded in her chest. The monitor beeped once, twice, then flatlined with a shrill tone that made her flinch. She unplugged the cord and stepped back. That's when she noticed her reflection in the black window across the room, faint, distorted, swaying slightly even though she wasn't moving. The reflection tilted its head. She stumbled back and nearly dropped her light. When she blinked, the reflection returned to normal, mirroring her movements perfectly again. She couldn't take it anymore. She bolted from the room, her shoes echoing through the deserted corridor. Her radio came back to life suddenly, bursting with static. "Sarah," a voice rasped through the noise. "You need to leave." It sounded like her supervisor, but wrong, slower, stretched, like a recording played backward. "Who is this?" she demanded, clutching the radio. No response. Only faint static that almost resembled breathing. She turned toward the nurse's station, desperate to see another person. But as she rounded the corner, every monitor on the wall blinked to life at once, each showing her, standing there, from impossible angles. One feed showed the back of her head even though there was no camera there. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears as she backed away from the screens. Each monitor showed her from a slightly different angle, one from above, one from behind, one close enough that she could see her own trembling lips. Her reflection in the nearest screen blinked a moment later than she did. She slammed the power strip off, plunging the nurse's station into darkness, but when she turned toward the exit, the hallway ahead of her didn't look right. It stretched farther than it should, the end lost in shadow. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, flickering one after another like a ripple moving toward her. "This isn't happening," she whispered, hugging herself. She started walking, her steps quick, deliberate. But with each step, the exit door at the far end seemed to pull away, getting smaller, further, like the corridor itself was lengthening. Her breathing grew shallow. She broke into a run. Her footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing off unseen walls. Then, halfway down, she stopped, because she heard another pair of footsteps running behind her. She spun around, but the hall behind her was empty. She could still hear it though, those steps slowing, stopping exactly when she did. The air thickened, almost humming. Then, from the darkness, a shadow peeled away from the wall and stepped forward, its shape vaguely human but shimmering as if made of smoke. Sarah stumbled backward, hands searching the wall for the emergency alarm switch. Her fingers brushed metal, and she slammed it. A harsh siren blared, echoing through the corridor, but instead of comfort, the sound made everything feel worse. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The siren died mid-blare. In the pitch-black silence that followed, she heard breathing. Not hers. Closer than it should have been. Right beside her ear, a whisper said, "You shouldn't have followed the footprints." Sarah bolted down the dark corridor, her phone light trembling in her hand. The weak beam barely cut through the thick gloom. Her reflection in the linoleum floor shimmered unnaturally, like liquid glass. Every direction looked the same: sterile walls, pale tiles, doors marked restricted or authorized personnel only. But something was wrong. The exit signs above each door flickered between red and green, glowing like dying embers. She tried the nearest handle. Locked. Another. Locked. Panic bloomed in her chest like fire. She was trapped. Her radio crackled to life, spewing static. Then a voice, faint, distorted. "Nurse Ward, please return to observation." The voice was her own. Sarah froze. "Who is this?" she whispered, but the radio only hissed. "Return to observation," it repeated, tone flat, emotionless. "He's still watching." The hallway lights flickered again, and for a split second, she saw movement, a figure at the far end, tall and motionless, its head tilted too far to one side, like a broken puppet. When the light stabilized, it was gone. Sarah turned left, sprinting toward the emergency exit near the loading dock. Her shoes squealed against the tile. The heavy door loomed ahead, her way out. She slammed the crash bar and stumbled into another corridor. The same corridor. The same posters on the walls. The same flickering light. She had run in a circle, but that was impossible. Her heart thundered. The intercom above her hissed again, then played a recording, her own voice from earlier in the night, speaking calmly to a patient. "It's all in your head. Try to breathe." The hallway darkened, swallowing the last flicker of fluorescent light. She raised her phone again, but the screen glitched, showing her own face staring back, eyes wide, whispering words she hadn't said yet. And somewhere ahead, down the endless hall, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps began to echo again, getting closer. Sarah stopped running. Her lungs burned, and her hands trembled so badly that she nearly dropped her phone. The corridor stretched on endlessly behind her, the sound of footsteps echoing in both directions now, forward and back, like something was pacing in time with her fear. She pressed herself against the wall, staring at the door she had just come through. The small window in it was black, reflecting nothing. Slowly, she stepped closer and peered through. On the other side was the nurse's station. Her nurse's station. The monitors were still glowing faintly, displaying static. She backed away, shaking her head. That wasn't possible. She had run at least 3 different turns. Her radio came to life again, but this time it wasn't static, it was the faint sound of someone crying. Soft at first, then ragged, desperate. "Please," the voice gasped, "you have to help me." Sarah lifted the radio to her ear. "Who is this? Where are you?" The sobbing stopped. A long pause. Then, behind you. The radio slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. The sound of footsteps stopped too. The silence that followed was absolute, thick, suffocating. Then, behind her, the faint click of the door unlocking. Sarah turned slowly. The door she'd been staring at now stood slightly open, just enough to show the faint glow of light beyond it. She knew she shouldn't. Every instinct screamed to run the other way. But if this was a loop, if the hospital itself was folding around her, then maybe the only way out was through. She reached for the handle. The metal was warm, almost pulsing. When she pushed the door open, the light poured over her, and she realized it wasn't coming from the room beyond. It was coming from the floor. Something was burning below the tiles. Heat rose through Sarah's shoes as she stepped into the room. The faint glow beneath the tiles pulsed like veins of molten light, twisting under the linoleum in strange, shifting patterns. The air smelled faintly of ozone and antiseptic. The familiar hospital scent warped into something electric and wrong. She crouched down, her hand hovering over the floor, the warmth throbbed against her palm, rhythmic, alive. Then she saw it, the faint outline of a handprint, pressed from below, glowing a dull, angry red. Her breath caught. Another appeared beside it. Then another. Dozens of handprints spreading outward beneath the tiles, pushing upward as if something or someone was trying to claw its way through. Sarah stumbled back, her shoulder hitting a tray of instruments that toppled to the ground with a clatter far too loud for the silence around her. The glow faded instantly. The tiles cooled. For a moment, everything was still. Then a voice whispered from the intercom above, calm and steady, her own voice, code blue. Room 209. Her pulse spiked. Room 209, the one where she found the empty bed. The one that had whispered to her. She turned and ran back into the corridor. The red emergency lights flickered back to life, bathing the hallway in a dull, throbbing glow. Ahead, the door to room 209 was open again, swinging slightly as if someone had just gone inside. "Hello," she called, her voice cracking. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the faint beep of a heart monitor. She stepped closer, and as she reached the doorway, the monitor's steady rhythm stopped. On the screen, where the heartbeat should have been, words appeared instead, typed out one letter at a time. "I'm not dead." The words blinked on the monitor, each pulse like a heartbeat. "I'm not dead." Sarah's breath fogged the air. Her trembling hand hovered over the keyboard beneath the screen. She didn't want to touch it, but the message stared at her, demanding a response. "Who are you?" she whispered. The cursor blinked once, twice, then words began typing on their own. "You know me." Sarah stumbled back. The monitor's reflection wavered in her eyes, the pale green glow painting her skin sickly. She didn't know anyone, she couldn't. Room 209 had been empty for weeks. She turned toward the bed. The sheets were pulled tight again, the shape beneath them unmistakable, a human form, still and silent. Her throat tightened. If this is some kind of joke. The monitor beeped sharply, cutting her off. The line of text changed again. "You said you'd stay. You promised." A cold wave crawled through her chest. The words struck something deep, something she didn't want to remember. Years ago, during her first year at the hospital, there had been an accident, a patient who hadn't made it through the night. She'd been alone on shift then, too. She'd said the same words before stepping out of the room, "I'll be right back." Her heart thudded. "That's not possible," she whispered. "You can't be." The lights above flickered violently. The monitor flatlined with a shrill scream. Then, in the silence that followed, a new sound rose from beneath the bed. A faint, dragging inhaled, wet, uneven, almost like someone learning how to breathe again. Sarah's flashlight trembled as she aimed it at the sheets. They began to rise and fall with each struggling breath. Slowly, the figure beneath sat up, the sheet clinging to its face. And from behind the fabric came a voice, rasping and broken. "You left me." The sheet slipped slowly from the figure's head, folding down as though peeled away by unseen hands. For a heartbeat, Sarah saw nothing but darkness beneath, an empty void where a face should be. Then, faint shapes began to form. Eyes. A mouth. Not flesh, but light, ghostly and trembling, like the static she'd seen on the monitors earlier. "Who are you?" she gasped. The figure tilted its head, and the motion sent a ripple through the air, as if the room itself were underwater. The monitors along the walls flared to life one by one, each displaying a different frame of Sarah's own face. In some, she was standing where she was now. In others, she was lying in the bed. Motionless. Her chest tightened. The figure leaned forward, and the faint outline of lips formed over its light-blurred mouth. "You left me," it repeated, but now the voice wasn't just in the air, it was inside her head, overlapping with her own thoughts. The emergency lights flickered, plunging the room into brief darkness before washing it red again. The thing reached out, its hand passing through the edge of the bed like smoke. The smell of ozone filled her lungs. "I tried to save you," she whispered. "You stopped breathing before you ran." The words froze her. She remembered it now, the heart monitor screaming, her trembling hands fumbling for help that never came. The fear. The mistake she buried under exhaustion and silence. The apparition leaned closer. Its glowing eyes widened into empty pits, swallowing the dim light around them. "I waited," it said, voice soft, almost childlike. "But you never came back." The sheet fell completely away, revealing not a corpse, but her own face staring back. Sarah stumbled back, slamming into the cold metal tray behind her. Instruments scattered across the floor, the sound unnaturally sharp, echoing far too long. Her double sat upright in the bed, head tilted, eyes vacant yet fixed directly on her. The monitors buzzed, flickering through distorted images, hallway feeds, patient records, and flashes of her own face, all overlapping like a broken memory reel. The room began to warp. The walls seemed to stretch, the corners folding inward until the doorway no longer led to the hall but to another room, an identical copy of room 209. Same bed. Same monitors. Same faint, sterile smell. Except this time, the bed was empty. Her breathing quickened. She turned back toward the original bed, empty. The figure was gone. Sarah stepped into the new room. The lights buzzed overhead, casting pale reflections across the polished floor. She froze. The reflection looking back wasn't matching her movements anymore. When she lifted her hand, the reflection hesitated, then smiled. The smile wasn't hers. Panic crawled up her spine. She turned toward the mirror's surface. It wasn't glass, it rippled faintly, like the surface of deep water. Her reflection reached out, palm pressing against the other side. The pressure trembled through the air as if the barrier between them was thinning. Then, the reflection's expression shifted, a look of calm recognition. Its lips moved silently before sound finally came through, muffled at first, then clear as a whisper. "Trade places with me." The mirror pulsed. The lights dimmed. From the corner of her eye, Sarah saw movement, dozens of faint reflections now forming in the polished walls, each one of her at a different moment in time, tired, crying, terrified, screaming. All of them staring right at her. Sarah stepped back until her shoulders hit the cold wall, but it didn't feel solid anymore, it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat trapped in concrete. Every reflection in the room moved slightly out of sync now, each version of her lagging a breath behind, their eyes dull and glassy. Then, slowly, one of them blinked when she didn't. Another smiled. A third tilted its head at a wrong, impossible angle. Her flashlight flickered, casting fractured light across their faces. "This isn't real," she whispered, voice trembling. But even as she said it, her reflection in the largest panel mouthed something different. "Stay still." She froze. The reflection lifted a finger to its lips, then looked sharply to the side, toward the darkened doorway behind Sarah. Sarah turned. Nothing. When she looked back, the reflection had moved closer to the glass, its palms pressed flat against the inside surface, leaving faint smears like breath on cold glass. The air pressure shifted. Somewhere deep within the walls, she heard a low groan, as if the entire hospital was breathing in. The reflections began to move again, not copying her, but reaching toward her. Their hands pressed harder, their mouths opening in silent screams. The mirrored surface bulged outward, glass bending without breaking. Sarah stumbled backward, tripping over the metal tray. The sound shattered the stillness, and the reflections erupted. The glass rippled violently, their hands pushing through, stretching the surface like wet film. Fingertips brushed her sleeve, ice cold. She screamed and swung her flashlight, cracking the edge of the mirror. A spiderweb of fractures spread across it, and as it shattered, every reflection froze. The pieces fell to the floor, scattering light. But in one shard, still upright, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Her reflection was still moving. Sarah stared at the shard glinting on the floor, her own reflection shifting inside it even though she stood perfectly still. The air felt heavy, electric, charged with something alive. Slowly, the image in the shard blinked once, twice, and then turned its head, looking away from her, toward something behind the frame of view. Her stomach clenched. The reflection reached a hand toward the edge of the glass and pushed. A faint crack split the surface, not outward but inward, like reality itself was bending. Then, without a sound, the image stepped out. It wasn't smoke or light or shadow, it was her. Every detail perfect, down to the trembling in her hands. But its eyes were wrong, completely black, reflective like oil. The double straightened, head cocked slightly, as if trying on her shape. Sarah stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. What are you?" she gasped. Her double smiled, the same small nervous smile she'd given patients for years. "I'm what you left behind." The fluorescent lights above hummed louder, flickering so fast they buzzed like insects. The thing that looked like her stepped closer, its movements precise, almost graceful. "You were supposed to stay," it said softly. "We needed you." Sarah backed toward the door, fumbling for the handle, but it didn't budge. Her double tilted its head. "You can't leave again," it whispered. "Someone has to watch the monitors." All the screens in the room blinked on at once, showing dozens of versions of her running, hiding, screaming, all trapped in loops. Her double turned toward them, smiling with a kind of quiet reverence. Then, slowly, it looked back at Sarah. "Your shift isn't over yet." The door clicked behind her. Locked. And her double reached out its hand. Sarah backed against the locked door, heart pounding so loud she could hear it echo in the walls. Her double stood motionless, arms still extended, smile fixed but empty. The lights above buzzed in uneven rhythm, flashing white, then red, then white again, each flicker revealing a slightly different room. Equipment moved. Curtains shifted. Even the posters on the wall seemed to change language between blinks. She pressed her palms against the door. "Please," she whispered, "I just want to leave." Her double tilted its head, that same unsettling imitation of empathy. "You already did." Sarah shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, You left the others here," the double said, its voice soft but layered, like several people speaking in sync. "We kept everything running for you. The lights. The heartbeat. The waiting." The monitors around them flickered again. Each screen now showed a clock different times, none matching. Some moved backward, some forward. One displayed 2 a.m. over and over, resetting each second. The hum of the machines rose into a low, droning tone that made the air vibrate. Her double stepped closer. The sound of its bare feet against the tile was wet, deliberate. "You can rest now," it whispered. "We'll take care of it." Sarah felt her body tense, frozen between fight and collapse. The room stretched again, the corners pulling away into darkness. The ceiling lights formed a perfect circle above them, spinning slowly like an eye opening. Then, with a jolt, everything stopped. The clock on the nearest monitor blinked once more, 2 a.m. Sarah's radio crackled to life. "Ward A, report in." "You there, Sarah?" She lifted it to her lips, shaking. I'm here." The voice on the radio sighed in relief. "Good. Your shift just started." And when she looked up, her double was gone. The radio's voice faded into static again, the same low hum that had haunted her since the shift began. Sarah stared at the clock on the wall. 2 a.m. Exactly the same as before. Her heart hammered. She turned in a slow circle, the same room, the same sterile smell of bleach and decay, the same faint flicker from the light above the nurse's station. But the tray she'd knocked over minutes ago was upright again. The instruments neatly arranged. No shards of glass. No blood. Her breath caught. No, I saw it break." The monitor on the far wall blinked awake. Static hissed, then formed a grainy image, the East Wing camera. Someone was walking down the hall, just like before. Pale. Still. Watching. Her stomach dropped. It was happening again. She grabbed her radio. "Control, this is Ward A, please respond." Nothing. Then, faintly, a whisper. "Stay at your post." The power surged, lights dimming to a dull pulse. Somewhere, a call button chimed room 209. Again. Sarah's hand shook as she approached. "Please," she murmured, "not again." The door was open. A faint heartbeat monitor beeped in rhythm with her pulse. On the bed lay a patient, covered, still, the shape beneath familiar. The air felt heavier this time, thicker, as if it remembered her. She reached for the sheet. The beeping stopped. The radio on her hip crackled once more, but this time, the voice was her own. Calm, steady, professional. Observation complete. Patient stable. Beginning new cycle. Her hand froze. The monitor blinked, and in glowing green text appeared the words she dreaded most. "Welcome back, Nurse Ward A." The clock ticked once. 2 a.m. Sarah didn't move. The words on the monitor, "Welcome back," Nurse Warded glowed like an afterimage in her vision. The air was thick with silence. Only the faint hum of fluorescent lights filled the space, steady and mechanical, as if mocking her heartbeat. She turned toward the hallway. Everything looked the same, but not quite. The colors were slightly wrong, washed out, like an overexposed photograph. The posters on the wall were the same ones she'd passed 100 times, but the faces of the smiling nurses were blurred now, their eyes blacked out with smears of ink. She walked toward the nurse's station. Her radio crackled again. Ward A, status check? This time, the voice was hers. Sarah froze. She lifted the receiver slowly. Who is this? No answer. Just breathing, steady, calm, identical to her own. Then, faintly. Behind you. Her heart lurched. She turned. And there she was. Another her stood at the far end of the hall, holding a clipboard, the same uniform, the same trembling hands. Except this Sarah's uniform was stained faintly with something dark at the collar. She didn't move, just watched with a tired, hollow expression. The fluorescent lights flickered once. When they came back on, there were more of them, 2, then 3, each one at a different point in the corridor, each walking a routine she half remembered. Checking rooms. Writing notes. Wiping blood from a tray that wasn't there. Sarah stumbled backward, clutching the counter. No. No, I'm not. One of the other Sarahs turned her head sharply, eyes meeting hers. The mouth smiled, split wide. You're late for rounds, it said in her voice. Then the intercom buzzed overhead. Attention staff, shift 2 now commencing. All personnel, report to observation. The hall filled with footsteps, dozens of hers, marching in unison. Sarah pressed herself flat against the wall as the sound of footsteps echoed closer. They marched in perfect rhythm, heels clicking against tile, the shuffle of fabric, the whisper of breath. Dozens of hers. Through the dim red light, she saw them pass one by one, identical uniforms, identical faces, all moving with blank precision. Each held a clipboard. Each glanced briefly at her without recognition, as if she were just another shadow on the wall. When the last one turned the corner, the hallway fell silent again, except for the soft hum of the intercom. Observation wing, her own voice said. Rounds commencing. Sarah swallowed hard. She had to see where they were going. She followed, keeping low, each step careful on the polished floor. The corridor twisted and stretched, leading her into a part of the hospital she didn't recognize. The walls here were bare concrete, the air colder, thick with dust and static. Signs overhead flickered, the letters rearranging themselves each time she looked. Operating theater became observing the living and then returned. At the end of the hallway stood a heavy door marked observation wing. Light bled from beneath it, pale, pulsing, rhythmic like a heartbeat. She pushed it open just a crack. Inside, rows of hospital beds lined the walls. On each bed lay a body covered in sheets. And beside every bed stood one of her. Clipboards in hand. Taking notes. Whispering softly to the figures beneath the sheets. Sarah's stomach turned. She strained to hear. The whispers were all the same sentence, repeated over and over in perfect unison. Don't wake up. It's not time yet. One of the doubles turned suddenly, eyes snapping toward the doorway. And in the flat, mechanical tone of a nurse completing her duty, it said. She's still awake. The room went still. Every version of Sarah stopped moving at once, clipboards lowering in perfect unison. The one who had spoken stepped away from the bed, her head turning with a slow, mechanical precision until her black eyes locked directly on the door. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. Then, every double turned toward her at once. Dozens of identical faces. Dozens of identical stares. The air seemed to collapse inward. The fluorescence flickered, casting them in jagged frames of motion like an old film stuttering to play. Sarah stumbled back, slamming the door, but the hinges groaned, refusing to close. A low hum began to fill the air, rising from the rows of covered bodies. The sheets started to move. faintly at first, then violently, thrashing as if something beneath was trying to rise. The other Sarahs didn't react, they simply stepped back, forming a perfect circle around the beds. Sarah's shaking hand reached for the nearest sheet. Against every instinct screaming inside her, she pulled it back. Beneath it wasn't a patient. It was her. Pale. Still. Eyes open, pupils dilated, lips moving faintly as if whispering words she couldn't hear. She staggered back, the room spinning. Every bed now moved, every covered body bearing her face. Each mouth murmured the same phrase, overlapping into a chorus that filled her skull. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Her doubles began to walk toward her, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. You can't stay between, one said softly. You left us here when you stopped breathing. Sarah's heart pounded. No, she whispered, shaking her head, I'm alive. I'm still here. The first double reached out and placed a hand against her chest. The touch was ice. You're not, it said. Not anymore. The cold hand pressed harder against Sarah's chest, and the world seemed to lurch sideways. The walls shivered, their edges bending and dissolving into white light. The sound of the monitors faded, replaced by something else, a slow, heavy rhythm. Thump. Pause. Thump. A heartbeat. But not hers. When the glare subsided, Sarah stood in a different place entirely. The sterile corridors were gone. The floor beneath her was rough concrete, darkened by years of stains. Rows of beds stretched into the distance, each connected to tangled cords and humming machines. The air reeked of chemicals and decay. Every bed was occupied. Every body wired, still, breathing shallowly. And every single face was hers. She stumbled backward, gagging. The machines pulsed in time with the low heartbeat that filled the room. On the nearest monitor, green lines danced across the screen, spelling out a single word between the waves. Reconnect. Her reflection flickered across the glass surface of a nearby monitor, not the terrified version she expected, but calm, almost serene. The reflection smiled faintly and spoke, though no sound came from its lips. The words appeared instead on the monitor's screen. You left before it was finished. Sarah shook her head violently. Finished? What are you talking about? What is this place? The reflection leaned closer. Its lips moved again. We were testing how long consciousness survives after the body fails. Her stomach dropped. The monitors all began to beat faster, the lines spiking erratically. The bodies on the beds started twitching, gasping for air that wasn't there. She backed away, clutching her chest, and for the first time, she felt nothing. No heartbeat. No breath. The reflection's smile widened. Time to wake up, Sarah. Sarah opened her eyes to darkness. No hum of lights. No sterile corridors. Only the soft hiss of air and the quiet beep of a single monitor somewhere behind her. She sat up slowly. The bed was the same as before, but the world around it had changed. Walls dissolved into open space, stars burning cold and distant. The hospital was suspended in a void, endless and silent. The monitors around her flickered one by one, revealing faces, not hers anymore, but hundreds of others. Some she recognized from old patient files. Others she didn't. All of them staring back. Watching. Waiting. A voice spoke, calm and familiar. Her own. You reached the end of the experiment. Sarah turned. The reflection stood beside her again, glowing faintly in the dim starlight. What experiment? She whispered. To see whether awareness can outlive the body, the reflection said. You succeeded. You detached, but you didn't let go. Sarah's throat tightened. So this is death? The reflection tilted its head. No. This is memory, refusing to end. For a long moment, the two Sarahs watched the stars. Then the reflection raised a hand, offering it. You can stay, it said gently, or you can return. Return? To the world that forgot you. Sarah looked down. The void shimmered, revealing faint glimpses of a hospital room on Earth, machines, doctors, a body lying still on a table. Her body. A single tear slid down her cheek. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Wake me up." The reflection smiled and stepped forward, merging with her. The monitors went flatline. Then, in the distant hospital on Earth, a machine beeped once. And Sarah Ward took a breath.